Hello, and thank you for joining us for another session of dedication. Fans remember the Bay City Rollers, hosted by Bay City Rollers Fan Events. It's been a while, but we're happy to be back with you. I'm Suze, and with me is Laura. Hey, Laura.
Hi, Suze. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited that we got to do another podcast. This was a great one.
It was, and it's one that we've been wanting to do for quite a long time. I think back in June or July, after we spoke to Nobby, we wanted to do this session, but the timing wasn't right, and now it is, and here we are, and we're excited. Today we're talking with musician David Paton, or is it Paton? Paton, right? Roller fans will remember him as a member of the Bay City Rollers in their early pre-Bell record days. David went on to be a very successful musician, arguably the most successful former member of the Bay City Rollers, I should think. He went on to form Pilot and co-founded the Alan Parsons Project. And just a quick look at his discography, and you'll be able to see how productive and prolific he's been, from session player to working with the upper echelon of the rock and roll world. David's an absolute legend. Are you ready, Laura?
Yes, I am.
Okay, everyone, let's welcome David. Hello, David. Thank you for spending time with us today. We've been really excited to speak with you ever since we did our podcast with Nobby Clark back in July. He speaks very highly of you, and we know that you've both kept in touch over the years with each other, both personally and professionally. We'll talk more about that later. But of course, as Bay City Roller Fan Events, we want to talk about your time with the Bay City Rollers. And it was just about a year you were with them, is that right?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit more than a year. I must say it was an enjoyable time in my life.
Oh, well, that's good.
Like being with them.
How old were you?
Probably 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
I'd been with a band before then called the Beachcombers, and Tam was taken by the Beachcombers. He thought we were a great band and we presented ourselves really well. And I remember one time he brought the Rollers along to hear us play and to look at us, and they stood right at the front of the stage and watched everything that we did. I mean, the guys, the Rollers were fanatical on the band, the Bay City Rollers, and they wanted to perfect it. So if Tam said to them, "Come and hear this band," I mean, they were really into it. So, it was quite a kick for us to have guys like that come along to see us, because they were already becoming popular in Scotland.
So were they bigger than the Beachcombers at the time? So it was kind of like the Stones coming out to watch a local band?
Something like that.
Wow.
The Beachcombers were well established at that time. And, we had a great reputation. I mean, we were all good players, and I was a lead guitarist in that band. We had heard of the Rollers. We knew who they were.
Yeah. Now, what was it about Tam that he wanted the other guys to emulate from the Beachcombers? Do you know?
He was just taking them through their apprenticeship, I think, and saying, if you want to be successful, there's certain qualities that you need. And he must have mentioned the Beachcombers and said, "Come along and hear this band, and it'll give you a good idea of how to present yourselves and the music to play."
Yeah, he was known as like an image maker. Was it your image, your look, or was it the musicianship that he wanted them to pay attention to?
I think it was the image. Tam was into good-looking boys. I think the Beachcombers was quite a good-looking band, and also the way we presented ourselves. We would wear, well, in particular, on that time when they came to see us, we all had on light blue suits and ties, and we knew within ourselves we should present ourselves really well. And if you see any of the publicity pictures of the Beachcombers, you're going back to the 60s, though, we did present ourselves really well. And that helps with any band.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's almost 90% of it sometimes, isn't it? And especially that was Tam's approach, wasn't it?
It was,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, Tam just knew how to make a band successful. I just think he had the charisma, he had the drive, the ambition, and he instilled that in the Rollers as well. Not that they didn't have it, as I say, they were fanatical about it, but Tam got them into that frame of mind, or helped get them in that frame of mind.
Yeah, the image. He was definitely a genius with that. That is for sure. That's undisputed. So, in doing our research, we saw that he first approached you to help with his potato business. Well, obviously that was monkey business. I mean, that how did he segue from potatoes to hey, let's play guitar in my band here?
Well, he was managing the Rollers at the time with his potato business, and the Thomas Paton and Sons was a well-known, established potato distributor in Edinburgh, and I had just finished with the band, the Beachcombers, and we had been in London for a year trying to be successful. It didn't happen. We came back to Edinburgh and we split because our vocalist had problems with his girlfriend, so the band split anyway. So I was without a job, and Tam approached me and said, "Look, you can work with me during the day." But I knew Tam actually wanted to try and groom me into the Bay City Rollers, which, well, yes, I'll tell you. Okay, for reasons to me, I listened to bands like Genesis and Yes and progressive music, and really the kind of music that the Bay City Rollers were playing was not my ambition. I didn't want to go that way. But after working with Tam during the day, and he made a big deal out of introducing me to his clients, he would say to them, "Tell them your name, David."
Oh,
say, "My name's David Paton." They thought I was a relation of some sort. He made a big deal out of that. So anyway, yeah, eventually he says, "Look, just come along and hear them." He had been on at me and saying, "Come on, join the band, you'll really like it." And I kept saying, "Nah, Tam, I want to do something else." But I did. I went along to see them playing in a gig, and they had all the girls at that time.
And you were 19.
Up in front of the stage and
Yeah.
screaming. And I looked at it and I thought, they play quite well. I was surprised at how well they played. And I liked the way Nobby presented themselves. I liked them all.
Yeah.
And I said to Tam, "Okay, I'll give it a try." Well, Tam had promised me, "I'll buy you a Les Paul, I'll buy you a Marshall amplifier.
Oh.
You'll be gigging 5 nights a week. On your nights off, with the guys will all get together. We'll go to the cinema, or we'll go out for something to eat together." So it all sounded good, like a boys' club, And I just thought, yeah, I'll have some of that.
You drop a Les Paul in a musician's lap. I mean, that's going to entice anyone. Did you get the Les Paul?
Could you say that again?
Did you get the Les Paul? Did you get the guitar?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I did, yes.
Oh, good. I was going to
Yes,
say.
I got the Les Paul. Eventually it was stolen and thrown into a place called the Water and Leith. So I was very upset at that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I've now replaced it. I have another Les Paul.
Oh, that's good. Well, in Alan's book, and speaking to, all this, he said that you were a solid addition to the band. He said you were a great musician and you were already writing your own songs. And that Nobby was also doing some songwriting, and that Alan had hoped that in the future you could write together. But at the time, Tam didn't really encourage that, and he wanted you to play the cover songs and I guess the pop songs. As a young artist, was that deflating, or was it not something that you really talked about, or were you hoping that you would work around that after time?
It was a bit frustrating because I was quite well for my age. I was really into music, and I was I learned how to play Spanish guitar, classical guitar. I was really into my music big time, and the Beatles especially, and they were a huge influence on me. and I wanted to emulate them as much as I possibly could, and they wrote all their own music, so obviously I wanted to do the same thing. And as you say, Tam didn't encourage us to do that at all. It was image, and that was working. That was working big time. His philosophy was, keep yourselves away from the fans. Don't let them know anything about you. Don't let them get near you. And that worked. His philosophy worked.
Yeah,
but it didn't work for me.
Yeah, you're 19. I mean, he wanted you to be enigmas, I guess. Untouchable.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
Yeah, try to keep young boys away from beautiful young girls.
I had a girlfriend at that time who's now my wife and has been for 47 years, and he really discouraged that, and I wasn't, well, in his eyes, I wasn't allowed to have a girlfriend. None of us were, and I was the only guy that could drive at that time. No one else had a license, so I must have been 18 or 19, and so I would be in charge of the van. I would drive the group van home at night and park it in my street where my mum and dad lived, and he would follow me, and then I would get out the van and say goodnight, and he would disappear. But after he disappeared, I would jump in the van and go down and visit Mary, my wife. I'd go down and visit her.
Good man.
Well,
That's awesome.
yeah, but he got wise to that, and he caught me out one time and followed me, and I didn't know he was following me. And it wasn't until I picked up Mary and I looked in the mirror, and there he was. So I stopped the van, and he got out his car, and he came over and he said to me, "You've been a naughty boy, David." So I was reprimanded for that, and the rest of the guys were all tutting and naughty boy, David,
What an absolute bizarre way to behave. You poor thing. Well, I bet it kept it exciting.
Yes.
Sneaking around.
But we did lots of things together. One time we decided that we would just drive to France, and nobody must have told you about this. And we drove, we wanted to get to Spain, but the van wasn't behaving. It was overheating with all the constant driving and the heat of being in France and Spain. We didn't make it to Spain the first time. We made it to a place called Le Mans in France, and we took the van to the garage, and the guy said, we can't repair it. So we drove back to Edinburgh, but we went again. So, I must have been with the Rollers for more than a year, because we went again the next year, and we made it all the way to Spain. And we used to love riding horses. I remember riding horses along the beach, and sleeping on top of the van, or cooking on a Primus stove. To me, I have good memories of it all. I know some of the Rollers look back on that time and think, Tam was a nasty man and all the rest. Well, he wasn't when I was there. Right. It was all good, clean fun, and it was just like a boys' club. It was great.
I love hearing stories like that, because, of course, over all these years, you do hear some of the... it seems like the unpleasant stories are the ones that take top billing, if you will. So while doing this, we've loved hearing these kinds of stories. We really have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot of negativity in my life. I appreciate everything I've been through, and I tend to remember and recall all the good times. I don't want to be bitter about anything. No. And I'm not. I'm especially not bitter about my time with the Rollers. Not at all.
I think that's a very good philosophy. I think that's something that we could all use in our lives.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I met Stuart Wood the other day.
You did?
I don't know Stuart, and I didn't know any of these roles. I knew Alan and Eric, of course, Alan and Derek. And I'd seen Stuart, and he just lives up the road from me, along with one of the guys from the Proclaimers. He lives up the road from me here in Edinburgh.
You must be on Musicians Row or something.
Yeah, well, there's an area called Collington. We're all in the same area, and we see each other occasionally. And I'd seen Stuart once before in the village, and he was putting something in the back of his car. And I was on my bike with my cycle helmet on and my dark glasses and whatnot. And
very rock and roll.
I cycled over and I said, "Hi, Woody," and he must have thought, "Oh no."
Oh no.
And I said to him, "I'm David Paton," and he says, "Ah, David, nice to meet you. You know, it's been a long time." And I saw him again last week in the post office, and we were trying to chat, but it was ridiculous because you have the 2 meter spacing and there was
Sure.
people between us.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
That's absolutely
Yeah, but-
incredible. It's like
I'd
worlds.
like to hear his stories.
It's worlds colliding, isn't it? In a good way. So, did you play the Les Paul in the band? Because by watching you on YouTube, we see you on that bass, slapping that bass, as they say over here. What did you play in the band?
I had a Telecaster, and most of the photographs that have been posted with rollers. And that's because the Gibson only lasted a couple of months and then it was stolen. The Les Paul was stolen. So I found that I was playing lead guitar with the rollers as I had been with the Beachcombers. But I'd always had an interest in bass. I took up guitar when I was 11 years old, and all my time through high school, there was other musicians that I graduated towards, and one in particular who seemed to enjoy playing guitar and bass. So whenever we got together, we would swap. And as I say, I was a big fan of Paul McCartney, so playing the bass just became more and more of what I was comfortable with.
Your thing, yeah. They say that about bass players. it becomes a part of you almost. The guitar becomes a part of you.
Yeah, especially in a band. Playing in a live band when you're creating all that oomph.
Yeah,
it's really good to be behind that, especially when you're in tune with a drummer. When he hits the kick drum and you hit a bass note at the same time, it's that hell of a thump, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's really satisfying.
Especially when you're like me, right down there in front of that speaker. You feel it in your
That's
heart,
You feel it in your chest.
You really do. You really do. It's the best. It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Well, later when you formed Pilot, you were the lead vocalist. Did you do any lead singing with the Rollers, or was that strictly, Nobby's domain?
Oh, that was strictly Nobby's domain. I would do some backup vocals occasionally when it was required, but I don't think my voice. I never ever considered myself a singer until Pilot, until I started writing my own songs, and somebody had to sing them. So Billy Lyle, who I was working with initially, his voice is a bit odd, it's a bit quirky, and I kind of wanted to express myself in my own songs, so that's when I started singing properly. But I still, now I do consider myself a singer, but for a long, long time I never had a lot of confidence in singing, all the way through Pilot. I never really enjoyed being the front man singing all these songs.
Is that right?
Believe it or not.
Yeah. Well,
That's very interesting to hear that.
do you find that you kind of grew into it? Because you certainly are a singer.
I don't think I grew into it. I think, it created a lot of... I'm a kind of nervous person and sometimes lacking I've forgotten the word now.
Confidence, yeah.
Yeah, so that has been with me for a long time, and when I was thrust to the front of Pilot, I wasn't comfortable with it, never. I know I maybe looked happy on the television, but I wasn't. I hated the press chasing me all the time, and not being able to go to the pub with my pals or go to the cinema with my wife. And I had a taste of that in the basic Rollers, and I didn't like it then. So I kind of tried to shy away from it. It created a few health problems for me, all to do with nerves. And I think I found my niche when I started to do the session work after Pilot, working with people like that. That was me really comfortable.
Yeah, being in the background, but the force. It really is the force behind the band, isn't it?
That's
But
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, being at the front and having all that responsibility, it's not in my nature to handle that, things like that.
Did you suffer from stage fright?
Not really.
No.
No.
It's just that you just didn't relish
I
in
was
it.
at my most comfortable when I was on stage,
Yeah.
and I still find that even
Hmm.
to today. I want to get up there and play because I have a lot of confidence in what I can do as a bass player, and so sometimes I like to show that off now.
Hmm. So when you were with the Rollers, is it right that you never recorded anything with them?
Yeah, there might have been recordings of rehearsals, but I don't think they survived the test of time. They would record some things just for reference as we were putting the songs together. But no, I never recorded with them.
So during your time, you were a gigging band that was just on the road, doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no need to record anything. We didn't really have anything to say. It was all covers.
Yeah.
It was just a cover band.
And the lineup when you joined was Alan, Derek, Nobby, and Eric Manclark. And also, no? Sorry.
I have
Oh,
to
correct me.
correct
Thank
you
you. Thank you. Please do.
Yeah, it was Keith Orman. Was it?
Dan Clark.
Oh, no, Keith Ellison?
No, Keith.
Oh,
I'm
gosh.
sure his name was Ormond.
Keith Norman. Keith Norman. Keith
There you
Norman.
go. Yeah,
You have to forgive us. There are a lot of names to remember.
I'm sure there are. Yes, I'm sure there are. Yes. So
Okay,
it was
so-
Keith Norman. He was the keyboard player. I always remember his Hammond. He had this huge, heavy Hammond that he used to take to every gig,
Oh, wow.
which was a great sounding thing. Still is to this day, a gorgeous instrument. So Keith and the two brothers and Nobby and me.
And then Billy came along later? Or were you never in the band together at the
much
same
later.
time?
Yeah. Eric Manclark came along, and Eric couldn't play at all.
Yeah, we thought we read that you taught him how to play.
I tried. He wasn't a natural musician.
Oh, but he looked good.
I did have experience in teaching because I like to teach people in Edinburgh. I would do a bit of teaching, a bit of session work as well. So I knew how to teach, and I tried to teach Eric as much as I could. Tam just introduced him one day and said, "This is your new rhythm guitarist," and I didn't like that. These kind of things put me off being in the Bay City Rollers. I didn't want somebody to join a band that couldn't play.
Sure.
That just goes against all my musical principles.
Well, just because they looked the part, right?
He looked the part.
Yeah.
Yeah, the girls loved him.
Yeah.
So that's where Tam knew he had a formula that worked.
So
But
what was the
Billy
vibe?
joined the band, and he was introduced to the band in the same way. Here's your new keyboard player.
Wow.
And I looked at this skinny little guy, just freshly out of the Marines. He was in the Marine band. He was a flautist in the Marines. And he sat down to play, and he couldn't play any of the songs, And I was kind of disappointed. I thought, oh no, here we go, we've got another one. But I didn't realise that Billy had a really good ability to play classical music. And it was just lack of experience that stopped him being able to play, say, a 12-bar blues or something, just play the 3 chords for a 12-bar. He didn't know how to do that.
Well,
So in a way, I kind of taught him how to do that.
Oh, wow.
And I heard him one time. We used to meet at Alan and Derek's house when we were doing gigs. And I approached the house one time. I could hear somebody playing the piano, and they were playing this beautiful piece of music. And when I walked in, it was Billy. And I was so surprised. And I said to Billy, "Oh, I really want to learn how to play this stuff." And Billy said to me, "Well, let's go to the library and we'll get music for flute and guitar, And he says, I'll take you through what you need to learn. And I already had a basic knowledge of music, how to read. But Billy helped me advance that to intermediate stage. And I'm really grateful for him that he had the patience to take me through all that, because it served me well, and I enjoy sitting down with a piece of music. There's nothing better than picking up a piece of music you've never heard before and then playing it. It's just a wonderful achievement for me.
You know, it's such a shame that Tam didn't, utilize that. I mean, the flute worked for Jethro Tull. I mean, he's playing piano. I mean, you could have really have, like, how did you mesh with with this lineup when, you have people who can't play what Tam says they are? How did you mesh and be productive?
They were all nice guys, and they were really keen to learn. And Alan played his bass upside down, and I would teach him his bass parts as well. But he was happy for me to do that. There wasn't any conflict at all. He would show me this bass part, because I had years of training of listening to Beatles songs, and eventually it came to the stage where I could listen to a song and I knew how to play it just by listening to it.
Wow.
That was way beyond the ability of any of the other rollers. When I joined Pilot, Ian Benson has the same ability as me. I met lots of people that can do what I can do, but at that time I didn't know anybody that could do it. And that's just, it's practice. It's a learning thing. But if you don't have the musical ability to start with, you're not going to be able to learn how to do that. You have to have the natural ability. And I think that I don't want to be unkind, but I don't think Alan was a natural bass player. He wasn't going to do anything groundbreaking on the bass. He would mimic what he was taught, and that was fine. Whereas when Billy came along, eventually he was such a quick learner. He developed a really good ability of what these chords are for this song, because we would just arrive at a rehearsal, we'd put a record on and say, right, we're going to learn this, and we'd all listen to it. Derek would get a fair idea of what the drum pattern was, and then I'd teach Alan the bass part, and Billy would probably manage to do the rest on his own, and off we'd go. And Nobby's got a good ability.
Yeah, he's got a great voice. Now, he also said that you were a very positive influence when you joined, and you helped the group develop, like you're saying, both musically and vocally, and that you kind of assumed the role as musical director. What made you assume that role? Was it something that came natural, or were you just fed up and you're like, this needs to be done, I'm going to do it?
I think it came naturally to me. When you realise that nobody has the same ability as you in whatever field you're in, you kind of your strength grows, and you take over the lead and say, I can do this. This is a breeze for me. I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it in a forceful kind of way. It was just, when we turned up for rehearsals, it was just expected that I would listen to the record and learn the chords and pass out the music sheets or something. You need a kind of an MD, a musical director.
Absolutely.
In any band.
Will you share with us why you decided to leave? I mean, I guess we can see some of the writing on the wall. And who was in the band when you left?
It was Billy, and it was the Longmuir brothers, and it was Nobby and me. And Tam had been down to London and trying to get some interest for the band, and he managed to get interest from Bell Records. I think he must have taken down a lot of photographs of the concerts that we played, and so he managed to encourage them to come up and listen to the Rollers. Now I can remember the guys coming up from London, which was a big deal at that time for 60s bands, and before I knew it, Tam was saying, we've got to deal with Bell Records, and I said, Tam, I'm sorry, I don't want to sign any contracts. And he says, oh, you have to. I says, no. I said, I want to leave the band. It's going in a direction that I don't want to go in. And I remember saying to him, I'd rather not be famous than be a famous Bay City roller. And when they had their success with Keep On Dancing, it made me feel, well, maybe I've made a mistake here. But at the same time, I was convinced that I couldn't go out and play in that kind of band. No disrespect for them, it just wasn't for me at all.
Sure. And history does show that you did not indeed miss your big break. But at the time,
the chances to that.
Yeah, but at the time, I can imagine.
It was a long shot, wasn't it?
Yeah. Besides Nobby and of course Billy, who sadly passed, have you kept in touch with any of the other rollers? And now Stuart, since he lives down the road.
Well, Stuart, well, of course Nobby, because Nobby's been my friend for a long, long time. I've produced some of Nobby's albums for him. He's done bits and pieces for me, and yeah, it's a good friendship I have with Nobby. He's a lovely guy. He'll do anything for his pals. He's that kind of trustworthy guy and a good pal.
Yeah,
I like Nobby a lot. I did meet Alan before he passed away, and I found his character slightly different from what the character I remembered. Alan was pretty humble way back in the early days. He was still a nice guy. I just didn't seem to have anything in common with him when Nobby introduced me to him again.
Sometimes you grow apart.
I've not seen Derek. I don't know what Derek's doing. I don't know if he's still a nurse or he's probably retired now.
Yeah. Will you share your thoughts on their legacy? What you think their legacy is?
Oh, they've got a lot of respect, and when people talk about the Bay City Rollers, they talk fondly about the memories that listening to Rollers music brings back to them, and that's what music does from a certain era, and it's great that they're remembered so well and so fondly. And at the time, to me, musically, it was oh no, I don't want to mention I was in the Bay City Rollers, but I find, especially in America, they've got a huge amount of respect, which is a great thing.
I don't think it was always that way. I mean, when we were kids, we were teased and, because they were a boy band or whatever. But lately, it just seems like there's like this resurgence and, like you say, respect and male fans coming out that, back then, if you were a boy, I don't think you would ever admit that you were a Rollers fan in America.
Definitely.
We were, like I said, we were kind of teased about it, but now it is wonderful to see that they're getting kind of their due in a way, and they've been through a lot, but
sure, of course,
it's wonderful memories, especially.
You can't knock that.
No, not at all.
And the success they had. Yeah, great.
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned that you and Billy co-founded Pilot. Magic to me is like the 70s song from my formative years. Every time I hear it, it takes me back, just takes me back to really a wonderful time. And I'm sure it does that for a lot of people. I mean, it was massive, just a massive, massive hit. How does that make you feel that, it's just such an amazing, iconic song of the 70s.
I have grandkids now. My eldest grandkid is 13 years old, and he comes to me and said, "Oh, Dad, there was a couple of guys talking. Granddad, there was a couple of guys talking about your song today in school," and I'm just amazed at that my song that I wrote 46 years ago is still talked about by young kids. They want to learn how to play it, and they see it as an iconic song.
It really is.
As a songwriter, it's just such a thrill to have a song that's going to be my legacy. When I'm not here, that song will still be here. That's great.
It is. It's wonderful. So thank you for that. They were good times. They were definitely good times. You were also an original member of another iconic band, the Alan Parsons Project, as the vocalist and the bassist. Tell us a little bit about your experience with them.
Okay. Well, you may know or may not know that Alan Parsons produced Pilot, and I picked Alan Parsons from a list of Abbey Road engineers who wanted to take the next step up the ladder from engineer to producer. So when we signed with EMI Records, they own Abbey Road. They gave me a list of producers. There were 10 producers on the list, and one of these, they were engineers at the time. One of these engineers was Alan Parsons, and I recognised that name because, as I said earlier, I liked progressive music. I saw his contribution as an engineer to Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. I knew that he had done bits and pieces with Paul McCartney, so he was the obvious choice for me, and we invited him up, Billy and I invited him up to Edinburgh, to the studio that we worked in, and we asked him to just mix one of the songs that we were working on. And he mixed the song, and we thought, yep, you're the guy. So that was it. We were booked in Abbey Road Studios, and we recorded our first album there. And we kept Alan on, well, we kept working with Alan for a while. One of the albums where Roy Thomas Baker produced, he was the producer of Queen. We just wanted to try a heavier, more aggressive sound, and Roy could do that for us. But we went back with Alan again. Meantime, Alan was introduced to a songwriter by the name of Eric Wolfson. And Eric Wolfson wrote all the songs for the Alan Parsons Project.
Okay.
And so they started working together, and Eric eventually he became Alan's manager. And he also had an idea for a project, the stories of Edgar Allan Poe set to music. And he put the idea to Alan, and Alan went for it. They got a deal with Arista Records, and they used Pilot as the band for the first album.
Oh,
so
wow.
The first album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, is Pilot, and Alan Parsons. So it was just Pilot all over again, with guest artists, of course, with guest musicians. We also were involved with the second album, all of us, except after that, our drummer, Stuart Tosh, he went on to join 10cc, and Billy went off to join somebody else. He had a fallout with Eric Wilson, so he went off to some other band. And myself and the guitar player Ian Benson, we continued with the project for over 10 years. So I was the bass player with the band for 10 years, and I only left when Elton John asked me to travel about with him.
Did you just name drop someone? I love it, because that's my next question. That's my next question. Well, first of all, before we get to Sir Elton, so Alan Parsons Project, I believe there's still a version of them still touring today. Is that right, or am I imagining that?
No, you're right. It's called the Alan Parsons Live Project. Alan Parsons moved to America.
Okay.
And he uses I would call them a tribute band. I know that's not very nice, but they are. There's not one single original musician, and even Alan didn't actually play anything or sing anything with the original Alan Parsons Project. He wasn't allowed to sing. Eric wouldn't let Alan sing any of his songs. So Eric is the guy that sung Eye in the Sky. He wrote Eye in the Sky. And a lot of people think, well, Alan Parsons is a genius. He's written all these songs. Yeah. He never wrote any of the songs. And he only produced the songs.
Yeah, and I would imagine it was, I probably assumed it was him singing as well, back then. Yeah.
You see, a lot of people just presume that. And as I've said when I talk about Alan Parsons, it's easier to fool people than convince them they've been fooled. And that's the situation with Alan. He's fooling people, because not one of these musicians, or even him, played the Alan Parsons Project. And the reason I'm a little bit, here's the bitter side of me, is because I've tried, we all have, the original musicians have tried to put the musicians of the Alan Parsons Project together. And every time we've tried, we receive a writ from Alan Parsons and threatening court cases and all the rest. So we've had to back off. We've never had the opportunity to show people what the project should sound like. So,
Tale as old as time, isn't it? Tale as old as time in the music business. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
So they're basically doing, I guess, the casino circuit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah. Anyway, I've given up on that. It was something that at one point in my life I wanted to pursue because of the contribution that myself and Ian Benson made to the project. We actually put out a couple of albums called A Pilot Project, and that's using the initials APP, same as Alan Parsons Project.
Okay.
I wanted people to get the connection.
Sure.
So we put out 2 albums of the songs that we helped to create with the Alan Parsons Project. But I've moved on from that now. Some of the other original members are still trying to pursue it, and I've said to them I'm not interested anymore. I've got my own career and I'm quite happy with it.
Well, I mean, when Sir Elton John calls you, you have to take that call. So tell us about that.
Well, as I say, I was doing a lot of session work at that time. I was working with, I've got a discography that I can't believe myself when I read
Yeah,
it.
we can't believe it either while we were researching. We're like, we're never going to get through this before the interview. but
Very
hey,
true. Very true.
It's during the
It was
pandemic
just a
we'll try.
session, just a session that came along, and I would take calls for sessions all the time, and they would say, "Are you available on, let's say, September the 10th?" "Yeah, I'm available." "Okay, we'll book you for 3 days." And I'll say, "Okay, yeah, fine." And be at Sun Studios at 12 o'clock. "Okay, I'll be there." And the last question I asked this girl was, "Who's the artist?" And she says, "Oh, it's Elton John."
Oh, just Elton John.
"Oh, it's
Just Elton John.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know?
So that was you played. Is it based on Nikita? Is that right?
I did. Yeah, that was the very first song I recorded with them. In fact, when I first went into the studio, I was in the studio itself talking to the drummer, and Elton just appeared beside me, introduced himself, and the drummer disappeared, and I was left with Elton in the studio, very nervous. And I said to him, "I'm just going to set up my bass, Elton." And he said, "Okay." So I sat down, I picked up my fretless bass just to tune it, and he sat down at the piano, and he started to play these chords. This is where my knowledge of chords came in handy. He played a bunch of chords, and I started to play along with him. And I didn't know it was Nikita, but he was playing Nikita.
Wow.
And after doing this for maybe 20 minutes or so, he stopped and he said, "Oh, I think you've got that." He says, "We're just going to record that song now." And he motioned to the control room, to Gus Dudgeon. "Are you ready?" And Gus said, "Yeah." So in walked, I don't know if you've heard the name Nick Kershaw.
What?
Nick Kershaw?
It does sound
Oh, yeah.
familiar.
Wouldn't it be good if we... Yeah, he walked in.
Wow.
He played guitar on it, and Elton called him Nikita Kershaw. Just, it was a kind of joke, you know. "Come in, Nikita," you know. So, yeah, off we went. We recorded the song.
What is your brain doing at that time? Like, how are you staying composed?
I don't know, a kind of numbness. Is this really happening?
It takes over. Wow.
Am I really talking to Elton John?
Excuse the pun, but magic, right? Magic was happening.
He knew a lot about me. Elton has a great knowledge about everything to do with music. In fact, he has just a girl knowledge. He help you with any crossword you were doing or anything.
And he stays very current. He knows who the movers and shakers are today, the young kids.
Oh, he does, doesn't
yeah,
he?
he's really switched on when it comes to. I give him a lot of respect for that. Now you've also worked with one of my favorites, Kate Bush. Do you have any Kate Bush stories?
Oh, just that it was through this guy Andrew Powell, who was the string arranger for the Alan Parsons Project, and he arranged the strings on Magic as well, the orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew produced Kate's first album, and he asked myself and Ian Benson to play on the album. And when we were introduced to Kate, we just saw her as a for me, she was an English rose. You know, I'm a Scotsman. And she was just a typical English rose to me. And she sat at the piano, and Andrew said to her, just play what we're going to do first. And she played this song faultlessly and so accomplished for, she was probably 18 years old at the time. And her voice was so sweet. I think all these experienced session musicians around her their jaws were dropping, you know. It's not every day you do a session for somebody as talented as this.
Now,
that was a fantastic thrill.
Had she broken at the time, or were you kind of discovering her at the same time?
Yeah, this was her
debut.
First professional recording in Abbey Road.
Wow. That's a pretty good place.
David Gilmour had a hand in discovering her. From David Gilmour from Pink Floyd.
From Pink Floyd, yeah.
He discovered her, and she was too young to sign the contract. I think he discovered her when she was 17, so she was too young, and he had to wait till she was 18 before they could sign the contract and get into the studio. So
you're on her.
Yep.
I'm
also on the second album, which is called Lionheart.
What a wonderful moment in musical history to be involved with.
It's fantastic.
Wow. Now, how about Rick Wakeman from Yes? You worked with him as well?
Funny guy.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy. Yeah. I was just introduced to him by a friend, and it was the guy that owned a studio near where I lived when I lived in England. And he said to me, can you come along and do a session for Rick? I said, sure. So I went along to do the session, and Rick was there. And Rick's music is not the easiest music in the world to get to grips with, but he doesn't read. So he does read, but he never had anything written out for me. He just said, I'll just play the piece and you can spend your time learning it. So he played me the piece, and I'm listening to this piece of music and thinking, where's the one? How does it go? 1, 2, 3, 4. It was nothing like that. It would be 7, 8, and then it would be 5, 4, and then, and to get your head around something like that, you have to really focus. So he left me alone for about half an hour or so, and I managed to get the bass part together for it. And he liked what I played, so he asked me to join his band, and I had a great time with Rick. We went to Israel and played with the Haifa Symphony Orchestra. We went to South Africa, to Swaziland. It's called something else now. We went to Swaziland and did a video out there, and I had a great time with him. Eventually, he said to me, I want to get rid of the band and just go out on tour just with you and I, and we'll call it the Classical Connection, and we'll play all my music in a classical way, which was great because I could play my classical guitar at last. I could get up there and play my classical guitar. So I did that with him for about a year, and then I left to do something else. I can't remember what else. I went on to something else anyway. But I had a lovely time with Rick, and as I say, he's a funny guy. He kept me laughing a lot.
Yeah, and the travels with that, how awesome. I mean, to be in that part of the world doing that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially Israel. I mean, how many times do you get the opportunity to visit Israel?
I don't think you're really...
Swaziland, there's just exotic places that...
And what a wonderful experience. And he definitely pings your prog rock buttons.
He did, although, I was a big fan of Yes. I loved their music, but when I heard Rick's the Wives of Henry VIII, I didn't quite connect with it. I thought this is slightly different. Maybe it's because it's all instrumental stuff, and I like to hear Ian Anderson singing with Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite connect with it. But when I started to play the music, I really enjoyed the complexity of it. Working with a drummer on all these strange rhythms that Rick would come up with. It was a great fun and a great musical experience. I love the diversity I've had with musicians that I've worked with. One minute you're working with Kate Bush, the next minute you're working with Rick Wakeman or Elton John. it's just great to have that diversity.
I could talk to you forever about about all of this. It's just fascinating. I mean, you're a legend to us. I mean, you've done a lot of work with a lot of amazing people, but you do have a new album out that I want to talk to you about called 2020. 14 tracks that are evocative, diverse musically, and timely because I found them to be full of love and hope, which I think we all need and could use more of. We're waiting to receive our copy, so hopefully it'll come in the mail soon. I'm tempted to do the download because I really can't wait. But we have been enjoying what you call your rough mixes over on YouTube, and really, really love these songs. Were these songs written, I say unique to this year, or have they been songs you've been working on, or did this whole pandemic inspire this whole record because it's called 2020?
It's a bit of all of that. There's one song on there that I wrote in the 90s, and another one in the year 2000, and there's two songs that are not my songs, they're written by other people who wrote songs specifically for me. They heard my voice singing it, and I liked the writing so much that I put them on this album. But a lot of the songs are brand new. There's a couple of songs where there's one song I've sung it in Spanish, Ver el Mundo Pasar, which is a reflection on where I've been in my life and where I'm going, and because of the lockdown I've had enough time to think about that and be content with it. I don't have anything unfinished in my life now. I think I'm happy with the way it's gone and the way it is, considering my age. I'm still active in music, I'm still fit and healthy, and I appreciate all that. So I can talk about that in my songs now. I can talk about how happy I am with my wife, and we've spent more time together over this last year than we ever have because we've had to stay indoors all the time.
Yeah,
sure.
So I can talk about that. I don't mind. I'm not a demonstrative person in any way. I'm not the kind of guy that says to his wife, "I love you" every day. I just show it in other ways. But the great thing about being a songwriter is you can say it in a song.
you certainly can.
And it's easy. It's easy for me. A lot easier to say it in a song than say it for real.
Well, she's obviously your muse.
Exactly. Was that going to be the next question?
Well, I mean, I have seen her in some of your videos and on your Facebook page, and she's absolutely gorgeous. So there's that, and just by listening to your songs, you know it's about her, and what a lovely lucky woman.
Well, as I say, I can write songs, and what's a better subject to write about than love and affection? It covers. John Lennon sang about it. Everybody sings about it.
Yeah,
it's one of the main topics of poetry and
there was
music.
There was an interview with Matthew Sweet, and I think they asked him why do you always write about love? And he said, "What else is there?" So I love that. I mean,
great answer.
What else is
lovely
there?
sentiment. I love that.
Yeah, I love it too.
Will you tell us about the opening track, Medicine? I really think this is so timely, and you're rocking that bass on that loop cut on YouTube, by the way. Or slapping it. Is that what they say? Slapping the bass? I want to be hip. I want to be hip.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to burst the bubble because it's not what you think it's about. It's actually about a difficult time in my life when I call it my David and Goliath because I was up against a big guy who wanted to take me to court for something really that was out of order, and I decided to stand up against that. I'd seen this guy sue his gardener, who was almost in his 80s. I saw him trying to sue his tailor. I saw him, his main threat was, "I'm going to sue you."
Yeah, we know the type.
There's nothing worse than getting a writ through the door. There's nothing worse than that. So he tried it on me, and I thought, no, this is unjust. I'm going to stand up to this. And I stood up to it. So I'm celebrating because this guy had everything. You know, I say, you're the VIP, you've got the PLC, everything like that. It's me talking about him. People think I'm talking about a girl and saying, you are the VIP and let's go dancing. No, in Scotland we say, we'll take you for a merry dance. I don't know if you use that expression. But taking someone for a merry dance is, dancing circles around them.
You're going to show them what's what.
Show them what's what.
Yeah.
That's why I say I can take you dancing. That's what I mean by that. And it's a shame because it's such a happy song and it puts people in a good mood. And then when you hear the real story, you think, oh, didn't expect that.
Yeah, well, but that is the beauty of music, isn't it? Everyone can interpret it their own way. So I'm sorry you had that experience, but I do love the song.
It's best. Sometimes it's best to keep the real theme behind the song anonymous and make it ambiguous. It's nice that way.
Right, and let people,
as you say, interpret it in their own way.
Tell us about the song that you sing with your daughter.
That song was written by a girl called Leslie Duncan way back in the 60s, I believe. It was covered by Elton John as well. Love song. And initially I got my daughter to sing this song because I just wanted to see what her voice was like, and I love this song so much, and I thought, nah, it's not a guy's song. I'll try my daughter on it. She was a bit down and a bit, lacking in confidence, and I said to her, come up to the studio, I want you to sing a song. And I sent her the song. She wrote back and said, I love it, Dad. I'm happy to do it. And up she came and sang the song, and it lifted her, and I think she's done a great job of it. Yeah. I'm really pleased with it. I love her voice. I did 3 takes on her voice, and she sang it perfectly the first take. I used the first take.
Sometimes that's the way.
That's amazing.
And we did talk earlier about Nobby and that you produced some of his music. Will you share a little bit of how that came about?
Well, Nobby must have spoken to you about his struggle with alcohol.
Yeah, we've read his book as well.
Okay, so I'm not betraying him.
No, not at all.
But I witnessed all that. I was there. I was trying to help him as much as I could. And he came to my studio one morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, and he wasn't focused. He'd had a drink. And I said, Nobby, there's no point in doing this. You're not going to get anything done. And that's when I realised that he had a problem. And a friend of mine, John Turner, who's also a friend of Nobby's, he said, we should try and help Nobby with this. So we went out to Nobby's house, and there he was in a terrible state with another guy in a terrible state. And it was getting out of hand, but his sister stepped in and managed to get him into rehabilitation. And I would phone a few times and say, I'd like to visit Nobby. They said, you can't, not yet. They wouldn't let me visit him for a couple of weeks and then eventually they ran a check on me to make sure that I had no criminal record or, I wasn't a dodgy character.
Sure.
But I was allowed to go and visit him, and I spoke about, Nobby, you need to get back into writing again, and he agreed, and he really got his act together. I've got so much respect for Nobby that he done that, because I don't know many recovering alcoholics, but Nobby's done it 100%.
Yeah.
He's a reformed character, and his songwriting just suddenly started to improve immensely, and he was recording with me, and I moved to Spain, and he came out and recorded out there as well, and I love his early stuff that he did with me. Yeah, he's done great, and I like his early stuff, especially when he sings about himself and what he's been through. So true to life.
Very inspiring. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
What a story he tells. Everyone should read his book. Honestly, it's really...
That was a really good read. I really enjoyed his book. It was very touching.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll go on to happier things. Tell us a little bit about your studio, and do you prefer performing over recording your own music or producing others?
Oh, I like both. I like all aspects of music. And I've stopped recording other people now. And since the lockdown, I've been so productive. I've completed the 2020 album, and I've also been working with a Japanese band who are now known as Sheep, and we've finished an album together. I've written 6 of the songs on that album, and I've sung them all. So during this year, 2020, I have been very productive in the studio. I gave up touring in October 2019. I don't know if I'll go back to it. I don't know what's ahead. You never know. But I do love playing live. I had 3 years of intensive live playing with a guy called Albert Hammond, and that was just constant. That was maybe 200 gigs a year.
Wow.
Which is a lot and very disruptive to my life at this stage of my life, when I've been through all that before. And I kind of got fed up of sitting in a van for 3 or 4 hours a day to get to the next gig. So yeah, my studio is great fun. I've got it exactly the way I want it. I can come in here anytime I want. If somebody, for writing songs, if somebody says a line to me face to face or whatever, I can usually write a song around it. So if this thought just comes into my head, I can just get into the studio and do it anytime. And it's very difficult to match the creative process when you're on a roll, and this inspiration to you from whatever source, I don't know, but it's a wonderful thing when it starts to overtake you. And I feel like saying thank you.
And especially during these times, what a blessing that is,
Yes. Yes, I know it's not just me. It's something that comes through me, and I can interpret it. Put it that way.
Well, you're certainly prolific, and I'd encourage all of our listeners to go to your page and look at all the music you've made. They could be entertained and inspired for weeks. Weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah, David, who today making music excites you? Who are you listening to, and who were or are your inspirations?
Well, the Beatles obviously were my inspiration. I mentioned Yes, Genesis, and Earth, Wind and Fire, Little Feat, who else? Prince, McCartney. Oh, there's a whole list from my past. For now, I'm more choosy. I listen to a band called Wolfpack. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're an American band. They have a bass player by the name of Joe Dart. He's just wonderful and great. They're great to watch. I love seeing a band perform, and you can tell they're really enjoying their music. There's nothing worse than going to a concert and seeing somebody standing there with a long, sour face.
Oh, yeah.
Like statues. Wolfpack, they jump about. They're really accomplished players, and they're a joy to hear and a joy to see. There's some great videos on YouTube. I would recommend looking for Wolfpack.
Is it VOL? Is it VOLVE? Wolfpack?
It's VULF.
Wolf.
VULFPECK.
Thank you. I will definitely look them up.
And I also like a guy who's a bit of a musical genius, and he tends towards jazz, which I'm not too keen on, but I do like it if it's played really well and not too self-indulgent. I like a guy called Jacob Collier. I don't know if you've heard that name. He's a great all-round musician.
Where's he from?
He's English.
Is he English? I'll have to look him up. Collier. Collier?
Jacob Collier, yeah.
Okay, we'll put the links in our...
Yeah, wonderful musician and a really warm personality. Modest.
Yeah.
I like that.
We'll definitely have to check them out. David, thank you so much for sitting with us today. It's been just really... I could talk to you forever. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
A pleasure.
We really hope you enjoyed that session as much as we did. What an incredible career David has had. It was a real pleasure getting to know him a bit. We'd like to thank him for making himself available and for sharing so much with us. We'd also like to encourage all of you to check out his website, his Facebook page, his YouTube channel, and just check out the body of work he has out there. So much music out there, really wonderful. We think that you'll enjoy it, so do check it out. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep on rolling.